I'm Tara Lynn with 5 Acres Honey Farm, and this is part of my Permaculture Guilds bundle. So thanks for joining me. And I'm just going to share a few things that I've kind of observed in the landscape to give you some examples of how you can understand what's currently present in your landscape, what it can tell you about your soil, what it can tell you about what other species might thrive there as well, and also how you can watch it through the seasons to get other signals. So this can kind of help you determine if you want to have these similar guilds in habitats that are kind of align with similar moisture, wind, sun, and other environmental requirements that are kind of on par. And I'll show you, these were already present in the landscape, so I did not add these. And I don't know if they just kind of happened here naturally or if someone else took it upon themselves to put these in. But what I've got behind me here, it's kind of just sagging over a bit to this time of year, is an elderberry. And so also to give you an idea, you might hear in the background some water running. So there's a little pond here that I'm next to. You take a peek at that. And so elderberry love having their feet wet. So they're good in areas where it may not be wet all the time, but you might be prone to flooding. This particular one has its roots pretty much in this pond area. So this one really thrives having this constant connection to the water. And then further, the little stream that feeds this pond, there are some more elderberry up there, which kind of further reinforces that they like having their feet wet here. So the reason that I wanted to point them out is that these kind of grass-like plants here, these are some irises, and there might be another type of water grass mixed in with them, but these irises actually are growing out like into the pond water, and they have kind of been expanding over the past few years. I don't have much experience growing irises, but I had a friend gift me some bulbs a few years ago, and she was explaining you're supposed to take them out and split them and move them to other places. So I have a feeling that these are kind of taking over a bit because, you know, they started out over here and now they keep going along the pond in this direction. So perhaps if you are looking for having a flowering species take over a pond or other marshy area, that might be a good solution for you. In the springtime, I will see lots of fish, salamander, and frog eggs, and tadpoles, and all sorts of little, it's kind of like serves as a bit of a nursery area. So it's a really good shelter for wildlife in that sense. But as far as like food production, you know, irises aren't really going to be helping you out there much, other than maybe a nectar source for the wildlife. But the elderberries, with the flowers producing, I've got a recipe for eldercello, which I can link below. But also using the flowers for tea and for tinctures. And the berries, of course, are very, very popular and known for their immune boosting properties as elderberry syrup. You might be wondering what I'm really showing you here. So this is a path that previous owners had put in that goes up to the top of the hill here. And it is covered in leaves right now and looks fairly dormant. It is winter. And in this little section here, this is kind of an example of observing your site throughout the seasons, because you might think, oh, nothing's growing here, which you probably think in a lot of places throughout the winter. But there's actually a lot of life that I see coming up here in the springtime, but particularly this little patch behind me covered in leaves. And I know no one planted this because it's a road, so I don't think anyone would intentionally plant flowers in the road. But this becomes covered in dwarf blue iris. That can be an indicator of a wet area. So similar to the iris we saw in the pond, which in that particular variety, which I'm not certain of the specific kind. But that one, as you can see, was kind of like that evergreen, and there's a little bit of it, that has kind of died back. But over here, this dwarf blue iris completely dies back after it blooms. I usually see it in late spring, and it's really beautiful. Similarly, it can be sited to a new area. So like, you know, if we know we're gonna use this a bit more, you know, in the spring when I see it come up, that would be an opportune time to relocate to kind of a marshy area. And I do have some ideas on where to put it. So that can, you know, help you identify, okay, well, one, this is a road, so it being wet, not so good. So perhaps improving the drainage in the area, moving the iris to an area that similarly has a water flow or might be a bit flooded at times. And it can serve as a good seasonal ground cover. So if you have some landscaping where you just want to have a little bit of some color and some forage for pollinators during different times of the year, that might be like a good ground cover that you know is just going to be present for a bit and then will disappear and allow other plants to be the primary source for pollinators. So I'm having you look up here a bit because you can see this tree behind me still has fairly intact leaves on it. They have blown off a bit, but there are a few others in the landscape further up that still have their leaves. So this tree is a American beech tree. So the reason I wanted to point this out is that if you have, let me fix this so it's not so wobbly. If you have specific plants that maybe need to have a little bit of shade year round, and this isn't really a very good example because it's just one beech tree by itself, but if you had a few beech trees near each other, because they keep a lot of their foliage throughout the winter, more so than other species, unless you're considering evergreen varieties, they can provide a bit more shade to plants that need it. So if you have some plants in your understory that thrive with more shade, one thing that I'm thinking of, and I don't have an example of that to show you here, is like pawpaws really like shade. They like wet feet. The beech trees enjoy being near wet areas, and they can kind of be in that symbiotic relationship of kind of helping to shelter them from too much sun throughout all of the year, even when the pawpaw don't have their leaves on them through the winter. But in that sense, they're able to help a bit. The other one that I don't have a visual example to show you here is looking for, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you have plants that do need a lot of light, and you might have them in an area where maybe they're just getting seasonal light, or you really want to boost the little bit that's coming through, consider adding some variegated ground cover or variegated kind of like mid-level like shrubbery. So when I'm saying variegated plants, so there are some varieties of herbs that, like I have a variegated oregano, for example, and that is evergreen all year round, and the leaves are kind of mottled where, they're green with like a bit of yellow or just a lighter green on them. And so just that little bit of variation can reflect a lot of light, especially if you've got a big swath of ground cover, that then your plants are not only getting the sunlight that's coming through above, but whatever is reflecting off those plants is then helping to enhance and help their neighboring plants be more productive if those neighboring plants thrive with more sunlight. I have another video that I can link to that goes into this in a bit more detail, but another way you can use your landscape for helping to tell you a little bit about what the soil quality may be. So a little bit further up the hill here, you can see there's a bunch of mountain laurel. Pretty much just covers this entire hillside. It gets very dense. It's great wildlife paths. We get a lot of variety of different animals that have cut paths through here, between coyote, bobcat, skunk, possum, deer, boar. They all seem to thrive inside the shelter of mountain laurel. However, mountain laurel are actually toxic to livestock, and as you can see, because they're so green, nothing's really eating them, so even the wildlife don't really consume the foliage at least, in large quantities. But they are an indicator of acidic soils. So if you do have mountain laurel on your property, that can indicate where you've got, and you can see like there's a very clear line of where, you know, they start and end. And so having that, it can kind of tell you a bit about maybe where some neighboring soil changes may be happening. But knowing they're acidic, if that's an area where you either want to remove the laurel and then plant something that also likes acidic soil, like blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, which there are a lot of wild berry plants through here. So, you know, they're all, you know, thriving in this similar soil structure. The thing that I used it for, which I'll link to the video, is that it's signaling to me areas of acidic soil, and I was looking for these hillside areas with similar soil quality for planting Fraser fir. So I've got, you know, a little Fraser fir friend over here, and there are many, many more all around this area. And so I'm using that as an indicator species of where I want to plant the Fraser fir. And then over time, what I would like to do is just kind of go in a little bit into the laurel and remove a few feet in and keep extending the Fraser fir throughout here, knowing that the mountain laurel is thriving in acidic soil, so that would be the same habitat that the Fraser would like. And being that the mountain laurel are toxic, it's actually what I've learned, they are similar to that toxicity of poison ivy, not in the sense of like giving you a rash, but in the sense that you can't burn it and you can't compost it. So knowing that in advance and really reading your landscape can help you not do a chop and drop, which is really popular in permaculture, where any of that extra foliage and biomass that you want to kind of lay on the soil surface and help build soil, the mountain laurel aren't going to help with that. So it's actually to your advantage to cut them and move them to an area where maybe you don't want things growing, or just remove them from the site entirely, but keeping those things in mind as well. So I've shared a bit about kind of looking through the seasons and pairing certain plants, looking at those acidic soil qualities. Some of the things like in this particular space that I'm planning on continuing to add, I've been resiting strawberries to this area since the berries produce well in this similar soil, and also adding some pollinator plants like bee balm and yarrow to give this space some ability to produce some nectar, since the Fraser firs aren't really doing that for pollinators here. So that way that the space can not really sit so desolate and instead produce something, you know, both for, you know, for us someday with the Fraser fir, but also just for the wildlife too. So if you've got any questions, please comment or drop me an email, or I'll also link to the post that's associated with this video, so you can comment on there and learn a bit more about some permaculture principles and creating guilds. And I'm always interested in some unique guild creations. So if you're doing something in your landscape or in your garden that you think others can benefit from, please share it, and I'm happy to share it along with some updates. Thanks for following along, and I will share more next time.